Hello and welcome to Bendy, a podcast about being flexible in all of the ways that means. Thanks for joining us. My name is Andy Young and I'm one of your rhetorical, expressive hosts. Joining me as always is our other rhetorical and expressive host, Beth Martin. Beth, a pleasure as always. What's the crack?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Perhaps.
So...
I heard it. I feel like I've used rhetorical before. I can't remember, but don't know, don't care.
True.
Here we are.
Do we just want to start the episode and let people know that you have a man cold? You have a cold?
Yeah.
I.e.
So I'm
man cold?
Essentially, I'm working with a disability this week, guys.
That's
so
true.
really go easy on me. I'm an invalid, and
He's 2 steps away from...
So if you have any comments about this episode and how I'm doing, make them be about how strong I've been and how proud you are of me, if possible.
Continuing on.
Yeah, continuing on, soldiering on through this horrible situation.
I'm cracking up. Because you made a mistake. And then you were like, don't forget I have a cold. And I'm like, oh my God.
I know, Beth. Come on. Right? A bit of sympathy
you're
here.
Right. Oh my, I'm just so impressed.
Thank
valor.
you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's the sort of attitude I need from the fans as well this week, okay? I just need your sympathy, your support.
Sorry. This is funnier than it needs to be. It's not funnier. It's not funnier. Funny in the way, there's no way I can come back from that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. That's
just
I
fucked
understand.
it up.
I understand. It's just very, very messed up, Beth. That's what it is.
Yes, it's terrible. Fans, if you want to belittle and make me feel bad about,
yeah, teasing per Andy.
What's the crack? So, trying to. I just realized that I've got like mere weeks before I head to the UK, so I'm trying to buy clothes.
Oh yeah, of course.
In Southern California.
Oh yeah, for the perfect place to shop for clothes for Ireland.
Quite.
I need to tell you about the weather today. Right, it has went from sunny and quite warm to hail, and I think a little fleck of snow in the air. It's an insane day of weather, truly.
Okay.
So yeah, dress for all climates apart from very hot climates.
Okay, perfect. It's like the time that okay. And also, like, I'm trying to pack as, like, little as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that's a challenge. The challenge of trying to pack properly for a country that has multiple weather fronts in one day. Mm-hmm. Is that because we've talked before about Oregon having similar weather to
exactly
Ireland in a lot of ways?
I mean,
so,
I haven't been to Ireland, but it would be like April, May is like pours and then it's sunny, and then it's like the hail, and it might like March.
Within minutes though, like would that happen? Yeah.
We're just like, and in Oregon it rains so much people don't even like, you can tell if someone's not local to the state, to the area. Like there are desert parts of Oregon, so I'm not trying to like say that all of Oregon is rainy, but like we gave up on umbrellas. It's like, why bother? And you just kind of slog through miserably in the rain, because just have a good windbreaker and call it good.
I think that would be our experience too. And I mean, I think that like a umbrella, because it's very windy here as well. Umbrellas are just kind of a waste of time. They'll be destroyed in minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna be fine, and I'm just gonna layer.
Yeah. That's So, yep.
But I got a new coat, and my old one, I was like, how long have I had this? Because Mike was like, I think you need a new coat. This one looks like dog shit. And he was like, you've had it for 20 years. And I was like, really?
Whoa, good for you.
Yeah, so he's like, let's go to REI. Do you guys have REI?
No.
It's recreation and something.
Okay.
Started in Washington State, I believe, and it's like really popular on the West Coast.
Oh, I recognize this brand. Yeah. Okay.
So went there, got a coat. It's just like, it's cost prohibitive because it's like, it was on clearance for like $290 or something.
Yikes.
I know. And it's like, I don't want to spend $350 on a coat.
I know. But like, I suppose the way I'm looking at it,
somewhere.
if it lasts 20 years.
That's what Mike was like, but cost per wear. And I was like, oh, right. So,
yeah.
O.J. Simpson died.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
It's so
before the pod.
It's just so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Because I remember, it's like when our, like in America, like our parents are always like, oh, I know exactly where I was when Kennedy was assassinated. We found out that he died. And it's like that for like 9/11 for us and O.J. Simpson's trial.
And the
car chase and the trial outcome announcement.
Yeah.
So it's like, I totally remember watching the car chase and just being like, okay, so we got to back up as to why we're even talking about this. So Andy's wearing a sweater that says...
It says Nordberg on it. This is the brand. And if anybody knows what the connection here is Nordberg was the name of his character in the Naked Gun movies.
And I love that character's name. It's just so fun to say.
I have to say, whenever I like saw this, I was like, this is a nice top. And then like saying it was Nordberg and me making that connection, it just kind of pushed it over the edge to me because of like how ridiculous it is. Right. Because it is kind of, looks like a kind of like I think it's got like a Danish flag on the sleeve. So I'm sure it is not connected to him in any way whatsoever. But yeah, you know, it was the connection that made me chuckle a little.
Mm-hmm. So I remember being in band class freshman year. I think Mike was there. And I remember like betting the guy next to me, like, you know, on the outcome, and it was like 10 cents or something. And I was like, yeah, I was like, he's going to be found innocent. He's like, he's going to be found guilty. And like, it was just like it was like a culture thing too.
Yeah.
It was all, you know, that was a really hard period in American history in general. And that was just kind of like the culmination. You know, we have these periods where like things are really charged, and that was a time. And so just to have him pass away with it, and like the link to the story never died because the Kardashian tie, because the Kardashian's father was one of his attorneys. And then they made it into a whole mini series with like David Schwimmer from Friends, and so it's just like it's just weird to not have him like around making weird headlines.
It really is. And then didn't he eventually end up going
he went to prison
for some other kind of crazy stuff, like shaking down some guy that had some of his old memorabilia or gear. It's all like he is such a like wild history, and like it's kind of, and I think that we don't really fully understand it here, but I know that he was like almost completely beloved in the US, like before, you know, the trial and before the, you know, alleged murders and whatnot. And like, you know, we knew him from Naked Gun, and he was great in those. He was really good.
Yeah. And
then for what a complete, you know, 180 in terms of his public opinion, in terms of the direction his life took, it was, and I've seen people even talk about, because I know it's a thing that's happened a lot in recent sort of discussions around American football, in terms of these guys taking injuries to the head that affect their lives going forwards. What's it called again?
It's called CTE.
CTE. Mm-hmm. And there's been talk about whether he might have been affected by that. And it's I don't know. It's like, you know, horrible certainly in terms of like what has happened to some of the people in his life, but kind of fascinating as well.
There was discussion, and I have to see where it ended up, but there was like, oh, they're going to donate his brain and find out, you know, if there's CTE, but I think the family decided not to. I have to see where it landed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's just, I don't know how else to say it. It's such an odd part of American history. It's such an odd, it's just like things that, he was so beloved.
Yeah.
He was so really, like, you know, I think more Caucasian people were his fans, you know, and like everyone's like, oh, he bridged like the racial divide and
Interesting.
So it's just charged. Can you hear that?
It is.
So, we gotta. Okay, this is my other thing. I'm like, O.J. Simpson, and then I'm gonna zing you in a totally different direction. We got a landline phone.
Ooh.
So like,
is it ringing? Okay.
Well, yeah. So now I'm getting all these spam calls, but trying to teach my children how to use it to call us, and it has like I got one for like elderly people where it has the big buttons where you can just put a face and it's like speed dial.
I love it.
Right? And they don't know what a dial tone is. Wow. So they're trying to like dial it, and I'm like, no, it's the wrong tone. Like when it goes beep, 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 that's like you're not connected to the line. When it's like beep, and they're like looking at me like I'm crazy. So it's just like a totally, they're like, well, how do I know? Like, how do I know when it's okay to, like, how do I call 911? And how do I know what the tone, if the tone is right? And so we've been practicing, and they're like, well, how do we know if it's you when you call? And I'm like, you don't. You just pick up the phone and say hello. And they're like, well, what if it's not you? What do we do? And so it's so interesting.
Wow.
The things that we take for granted, because we're elderly people in our mid-40s.
That's true.
But it's just like the things that were common knowledge. And we were like looking at phones on Amazon. I was like, should we get a rotary phone? Or like they actually had like the red phone. That like that we could the president has like to pick up the red phone, right? I was like, should we get one of those? Anyway.
The next thing to do would be to give them either a VHS or a cassette tape and be like, what's this? Figure this out.
We do have a car that takes tapes, so they do know what tapes are. Mm-hmm.
Okay, they do. Okay.
VHS, they would have no idea.
No.
They would have no idea.
It's been so long since I've even seen a VHS. It'll probably look so odd to me when I do actually see one. Well, if I see one again, But yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I have one because I essentially have my phone on silent at all times.
So do I.
Always. And it's like, which I think is the smart move in this day and age. Honestly, a phone is just a friggin' portal into hell, honestly. I mean, like, there's useful stuff on it, but it's so much of it's grim. But so like if there's an actual emergency, my parents know to call me on that number. They can always get hold of me on there. But the thing is that like I don't even answer that phone a lot of the time. I mean, I can see the number on it. If I see it's my parents calling, I'll pick it up. But like, and by and large, when I do, it's like my dad going, can I pick up that box that you've been talking? Like, can I pick it up in the next 15 minutes? And I'm like, no, I'm leaving the house. Oh, I need it, but I need it now. And I'm like, so it's like not something that is urgent, but they've decided to make it into an urgent issue,
Yeah.
So, fun.
Everyone's definition of urgent is very different.
Oh, so true. So true.
What's the crack with you?
Really very little. I have two things. I mean, I saw Godzilla.
The new one?
Godzilla X Kong. Yes.
Is this the one where Godzilla has like the robotic arm?
The power fist? Yes. So like, it's so funny to me. So it's not great, honestly. It was fine. I mean, there was some fun action stuff in it. At one point, my favorite bit was Godzilla does a suplex in King Kong, which is fucking awesome. Onto a pyramid, actually, which is pretty
like,
awesome.
In Egypt?
Yes.
Fuck yeah.
It is.
If you're gonna do one, and you get to like, it's either like Eiffel Tower, pyramid. Yes. That's basically it.
I mean, I kind of want King Kong to like, rip the Eiffel Tower up and like throw it through a monster or something like that. That would be kind of awesome. But it was. I mean, like, it's completely ridiculous. It was fun, and there was some fun stuff in it, but it was essentially kind of ludicrous. But like, I had been thinking about it afterwards, and in theory, these are supposed to be through lines from the Godzilla movie, the reboot, like back, about 15 years or so ago. And that movie was so kind of serious and somber. And now you've got like Godzilla getting a power glove so he can like, punch some other monster, It's so crazy.
They have to team up.
But like Dan Stevens is in it and he's awesome.
They got such a good cast.
They did. I mean, I like Rebecca Hall as well.
I love her too.
Tons of people I like.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's fine. But like, it just made me remember how incredible Godzilla minus one? Yes, Godzilla minus one, which was the Japanese one that came out just before Christmas, which is just sensational from beginning to end. I can't talk enough about how good that movie is. It's just, I mean, like, I went in hearing it was good, and it really kind of blew me away. But it's one to watch rather than that movie, honestly.
Have you ever looked at the list of Godzilla movies that have been made?
Oh, There's so many.
There's so many. Because it's like, like for Marvel movies, like, how do I watch them in order? And I looked, I went down the wormhole. Charlie's terrified of Godzilla. Harper loves Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to find like one that was sort of like palatable for both of them.
Yeah.
And it ended up there was like a tsunami and he started screaming and like ran out of the room.
Oh, okay.
He's very afraid of natural disaster stuff. So, and anytime an animal dies, which I agree with. The second one.
Mm-hmm.
So Avatar 2 was not a win.
Oh no! Yeah.
So, anyways,
I was going to say anything with like Godzuki in there, the little like mini Godzilla might be nice, but I don't even know. It's been so long since I've seen any of those films, so I couldn't say whether they don't take a hard like turn into something horrifying. Right. Who knows?
Right.
The other thing was, just because I haven't been doing, like, I'm kind of saving. Obviously, Beth's coming in May, and I've got other stuff happening in May, so I'm kind of saving for May. Not been doing much, but I did sign up for a marathon hike. So we're essentially doing the distance of a marathon in one day, hiking along the coastline of. So people, from Northern Ireland or maybe the UK will know it's from Coleraine, essentially along the coastline to about Giant's Causeway sort of direction. But I think the route is supposed to take it to be about 8 or 9 hours of walking.
Wow.
So yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, it's still my preference over a running marathon any day of the week.
Absolutely.
But that's not until like 22nd of June. So yeah.
So do you have to like start like practicing?
I feel like I do enough walking that it won't be a problem, and I've definitely walked. Yeah, I walk enough, and I've walked those distances before. I probably will do a little bit. I'll probably get my distances up a little bit in the lead up to it, but I really don't think it should give me too many problems. So yeah, but I'm just gonna have to like start getting sponsorship and things like that.
I saw that, and I need to sponsor you.
I'm going to do a more active sponsorship drive, and my technique for that is I've already taken a picture of Sasha sleeping upside down with her legs in the air, and I'm going to say Sleepy Sasha wants you to sponsor Andy, and that will get the sponsor.
That will. It's true. What is the sponsorship going towards?
Macmillan Cancer Research. So they're a cancer research a UK based company that does cancer research. So, yeah, so that's worthwhile. And especially because my mum went through some cancer stuff last year. It's particularly relevant to me, and it's always a good charity to support, I think.
Agreed. So if anyone's interested.
Yeah.
When is it?
Our 22nd of June. I will post the link. I mean, we'll probably put the link on our socials maybe somewhere at some point.
Yeah,
maybe.
I can totally do that. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so we'll do that. But but that's all I have.
So last week you told people you were going to give up weed.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to give an update?
Yeah, so I've done it for a week. I mean, like, it's only a week's passed, but when we were talking about this a little bit ahead of time, I feel like, I am prone to certain amounts of paranoia and things like that anyway, but I certainly haven't felt the depths of it over the past week. As I say, it's only been a week, so it's too early to say anything for sure, but I definitely feel the positive effects of it already. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to continue monitoring things. Obviously, there's been a pretty dramatic change in that I have a cold now, so it's hard It's hard to get a clear reading on that, and obviously that has been a really traumatic experience over the past few days. But yeah, mostly a positive change so far. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. Proud of you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Not because you're like stopping weed, but just because like you're making efforts to try and figure out kind of how to balance your...
The other thing in that regard, I should say, is thank you for starting. And we talked about this briefly, is that I had like bloods drawn to test like hormone levels and like bloods and whatnot, and everything came back okay within tolerable levels, or within normal levels. So it's good news. I also like, so much of this this process has been me looking for like a smoking gun cause for it. I think that is common to a lot of people's mental health journeys, So I didn't find that there, but also it is reassuring to know that there's nothing, physically going on in those areas anyway. So yeah.
Having found out, having had abnormal stuff in those areas, it's always like, oh, like on the one hand, it's like, okay, I'm not like, there's not something that like, it's a tangible thing. Like now I know what to deal with in this area, but then it opens up a whole like, okay, but now how do we get this area? Yeah, like how do we get you stable in this area? And it's always trial and error, and it's been like literally years of trial and error.
Yeah.
For me, so I'm glad that your stuff came back. It's funny. Tolerable is not normal here. It's like I'm like tolerable, but
they're like I mean, he was like, oh, you see your hormone blood levels, so they're high, but they're within the normal range, and I'm like, oh yeah. For my testosterone that was, and I was like, okay, sweet. I was like, ladies, I am
your ego's like tiny claps.
Yeah, exactly. So it was good, but like, and then he came back. The last one he gave me was, he said, so your blood sugars, and I was like, oh no, here we go. These are probably going to be disastrous because the amount of sugar I consume. And he's like, nope, they're good too. And I was like, yeah. So a relief.
You shouldn't eat sugar if you have a cold. I just made that up. I'm kidding.
That's, based on my research, I saw something very different.
We forgot to name our topic.
Oh, we did forget to name. I was thinking about calling it loving language.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
I do love language.
Yes. So do I. Do we have anything? Do I have any occurrence stuff?
Oh my god, I have crack.
Okay, get something quick, because like I feel like we've already been.
We have been blabbing. Okay, so you'll be surprised to find out. I don't think it's a listener; it's just someone that like looks at our stuff on YouTube. They were pretty upset that we don't like Conor McGregor.
He is so polarizing a figure,
apparently, like, and someone else was like, yeah. So I have to read the quote. This person disagreed. They said he was the best part of the movie, meaning Roadhouse. Oh, yeah. Everyone I've spoken to loved him in the movie. He could be the next Marvel villain. So Conor McGregor, I'm glad you're a listener. Yeah,
Conor. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for your support.
Super glad you're here. Go keep doing what you're doing.
Yep. As long as it isn't the bad stuff. Just keep it the movies, keep it to the octagon, Yeah. Interesting. It's I remember years ago when I was still like writing, I did like video game reviews for like a website many years ago.
Oh, fun.
And there was I reviewed a skating game, and I like trash talk Bam Margera a little bit, and people really came for me over that. It was very eye-opening. I didn't really go in at him, but it was like one sentence and people were like, hey, Bam's amazing. Like I think it's just odd for me because there's nobody like I'm so passionate about. There's no sort of like I don't know these people. There's people I like, celebrities I like and whatnot, but I don't really know them so much that I'd be like angry if somebody was like attack them online somewhere, but
yeah, like their early Bam's like I can see why people came. I was friends with like skater dudes who were like, like the original like videos that they would send out before what was the name of the show?
I remember Can't Kill Yourself. CKY was the big one. Yeah. And we seen some of those videos. Yes.
And that was pre Jackass. Yeah.
It was. So. Yeah. So, but yeah. But so we get into today's topic then.
No, let's just talk about whatever.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's just talk about Godzilla for another hour.
The power arm.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
What did we decide? Loving language, did I say?
Loving language.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. So yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit because I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about, and I think I touched on this in a recent episode. I've been watching Shogun a lot recently, and what's really interesting about Shogun, it's a great show anyway. It's excellent. Everybody should check it out. But what's really interesting about it is the translation in that show, and what it does is it kind of shows you conversations that Japanese characters are having with this Englishman, and how the translator. So you see the complete sentence for with in subtitles what the Japanese person's saying, and then how she translates it is so interesting and so telling in terms of like trying to contextualize it for the Englishman in the way that he would understand rather than a straight translation. And I thought that was, I think it's such an interesting insight into that show, into like culture and things like that. It just really started making me think about language a lot more recently.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too because I'm curious about how your culture supports like multilingual learning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
That's
how ours does or does
oh,
not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I want to touch on. And in fact, there's some interesting stuff in terms of, I think we've talked a little bit, I've talked to you a little bit about, Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, and there's Scots Gaelic, there's like Welsh Gaelic and things like that.
Yes.
And so, yeah. But yes, we can maybe get into that. I don't know if you have anything you would like to start with.
I just want to know, like, what languages do you have experience with?
Yeah. Okay. So, in school, we studied French, Spanish, and German until I think we did an episode on high school, and we talked a little bit about this. But we studied those for 3 years briefly, and then we got to specialize in one until our 5th year of high school, and then if you wanted to follow it through to a higher level, you kind of had the option at that stage. So a little bit of exposure to French and German, and a decent amount of Spanish. As I said, I did 5 years of Spanish, and I have actually done Spanish courses. I've done like a year of Spanish, so I have a smattering of Spanish, but like I don't ever use it, so it's deep down there. But I have found with other languages, like at times when it has come up and it's been useful, I have been able to like summon some bits and pieces. I have been able to get by. The year I spent in Korea, I studied Korean only for about 4 or 5 months, and I remember going back to Korea and some stuff still came back to me. It's like it's down there somewhere, And whenever I spent 2 years in Taiwan, the final year I went to a Mandarin tutor, and so I studied that for about a year. But there's still bits and pieces that are like floating around there, and I'd say probably if push came to shove, I could probably navigate some of it. And I hear some Mandarin, people speaking Mandarin, and there's stuff I understand here and there. So I have smatterings of those kind of 5 languages, I'd say.
How old were you?
What about you? Sorry.
Before we move to me and talk about me, which I love, how old were you when you started learning languages?
Let me see. High school would have been 11 or 12, I think.
Okay.
I would say.
So here, we wouldn't start learning a language. Okay, it's very different. I'm gonna kind of go. I guess like I'm gonna go into our culture a little bit. So we typically will start in our high school, so around like 14 is when and then you pick. Latin is a dead language now. My mom took Latin. I wish they still taught Latin, but it's
so did my mom.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I would have done so much better on my. They're called SAT scores, if I'd known like root language, but that's okay. So you would pick one language, and it was either Japanese, Spanish, French, or German. You couldn't. That was it. Like you would pick one, and you would run with that. So we did that for 3 years. 3 years. And then in college, depending on your major, you might take a language. And I did Spanish again because I was like, haha, I'll just do really well.
I've got this,
right? But everything that I learned in high school, we went through in one term in college. Oh, wow. And I was like, oh, fuck. Uh-oh. So I feel like I missed out on a lot of other... It would have been helpful to have had the opportunity to be multilingual as a kid, but it's just not something that's supported here. And what's interesting is I know just like I know people whose parents have come over or their grandparents came over and from different countries because we're the melting pot, right? And so a lot of families that have come over, you know, in whatever time, however many, you know, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, would typically not allow their children to speak their native tongue because they wanted them to be American. And so that has been something that I think has been largely, not for all families, but has been largely lost in our culture.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this great desire to really, like, you know, you're American, you're not, you know, where you came from has been a thing. And also, I will say, learning another language is almost like a class issue where like if you have access to education, you know, you have supportive parents, all of that, then you get access to, you know, another language, whereas, you know, people in underserved communities, they don't have the same
resources.
Yeah. So I'll also say, and I'm not trying to get myself in trouble here, but I think part of our issue is that we assume everyone speaks English.
Yes.
And why bother?
that is a very British thing as well. For sure.
Okay. So it's and I will say, and well, we can get into like our travel experiences, but it's because I hope that we don't go the road of having like one language that everyone speaks on the planet.
Yeah.
I'll just say.
There's something like that is lost if that happens, because there's something so rich about just how other languages express similar concepts, you know. I think there's some really wonderful, like, and it was in a guidebook, and apparently it doesn't mean exactly this, but whenever I was like in Japan, I had like a sort of phrase book, and one of the phrases was for the English translation was easy tiger, and the word was chotomate. And chotomate kind of means like, wait a minute, just hold on a second. And I just loved it so much that it still sticks in my head. But like, just talking to my Japanese friend sometimes, and like her mom comes and sits here and she goes, oh, chotomate. And I'm like, easy tiger. You know, I know that that's not, it's not like set in stone. It's not that one meaning. It's like, you know,
it's got several.
It's got a range of stuff, and like how it's delivered, who it's delivered to, you know. And I think there's something really kind of wonderful learning about that, you know.
So do you think of like, of all the languages that you speak, do you have one that you're like, that's probably, would Spanish be your second language?
Probably it's the one that I know best after English, but it is not, I don't really have a good grasp of it. I probably don't have a lot of language. I could probably, like, you know, get by. If I had to speak Spanish somewhere, I probably could get by in like very kind of halting, like broken Spanish, no, I'd say. But like, I don't think it's good in any stretch of the imagination. But I think that like in my life, I have found there are some people who just have an affinity for languages that are really have that their brain works that way. Mine doesn't. I think I can like brute force a lot of things, including languages, if I really try. And I think that's what's happened with Spanish. That's what happened with Mandarin a little bit. But like, it just doesn't stay there, or it doesn't like click in as easily as I would like, certainly, you know. So probably Spanish, but I'd say probably Mandarin is up there as well. But like,
it's so cool.
Saying that, my language skills in both the languages are half-assed at best, but they're both, I'd say, at a similar level. But like, my Mandarin skills, so the thing about that, and the thing about that I love so much about the language, is that like, it's like a tone-based language. So basically, you know, words can be said in 4 different ways, and depending on how you say them, it's radically alter the meaning. And just getting used to that, like how those tones work, and like, you know, wrapping your mouth, your tongue around those ways of speaking is so difficult whenever you just aren't you aren't used to it. It's not a way you've had to really think about words at all. Mm-hmm. But I love it. It's so fascinating, you know, and it really was such a, like, I really loved the experience of learning it. Even though, as I say, it was a struggle, I did enjoy it.
I would say I speak Spanish all the time.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, and I think part of it, I thought about, like, I'm speaking it more. I've probably spoken. I spent a lot of time in Mexico getting treatment. Of course. A couple years ago, so like obviously I had to, and it was like a tiny little town where no one spoke English really. So, but also because since we've moved, we're so close to the border. It's like 45 minutes from our house. Mm-hmm. So like commercials are usually in both languages. You know, advertisements like both languages or in Spanish completely, which is, I think it's pretty cool. And what's interesting, did I tell you this? That he went to the library, he's reading Dog Man in Spanish.
Yes, you did. Not in Spanish? Oh, no, you didn't?
Yeah.
Maybe you did. Okay. I knew about Dog Man. I don't think I knew it was in Spanish, though. Okay.
So he's writing down all the Spanish words. Awesome. All by himself. And I'm like, okay, like, he wants to learn Spanish, so we're going to the library today at 4:00, and there's like free beginner kids Spanish class. So those are the things that I'm starting to like realize are actual opportunities, but it's based on geography. Like if we lived 20 hours north, that wouldn't be as accessible.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's a wonderful opportunity in that way as well. Do you know what I mean? That he's able to do that. So and he clearly has. It sounds like he has an interest in it as well, which is fantastic.
I know. Yeah. So just like hopping onto your, like, some people are just meant for languages. Like maybe that's his thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that would.
Being annoying is definitely his thing, but and adorable all at the same time.
Of course. Of course.
So, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to ask. So, like, I mean, would you say then, because you asked me about this, you know, would you say Spanish is your sort of the next language that you're next most competent in, or you feel most comfortable with after English? Yeah. Yeah,
okay. Definitely. Because we spend time in French Polynesia.
Yeah.
I'm starting to speak more French. I'm starting to speak French. Really poorly. My favorite word is désolé. I'm sorry. And then a little bit of Tahitian, because they speak English, Tahitian, and French there. Like every child is just, they are born being able to speak all languages.
No, that's lovely. So you know, bit of Spanish, bit of French, then would be the things that you reckon you have access to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I just, because it's jumped into my head.
Obrigada. That's the one word I know in Portuguese.
Obrigada. Yeah. So I was playing Guess What Helldivers 2 the other day, and I got into a server, and it was 3 guys speaking Mandarin, and I just and I wasn't on comms. I was just listening to them speak, and it was lovely because I recognized a decent chunk of what they were, well, not a decent chunk, but some of what they were saying. But what's so interesting is, because you think about how, you know, words are said, people in the English language, like they you know, people who speak English don't always speak precisely. They speak in slang, they speak in, like, they slur words, or that becomes a habit and things like that. And just how they were saying certain things and how casually they were, and like how it was really interesting. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys, I don't know why, maybe he thought I was American, he started saying, "I want to eat hamburger." In English. And he just repeated it a couple of times, and it was very, very funny. But I think I just love, I don't know, I just love listening. I just being immersed in language, and even if I don't really understand it, I just find that a very kind of nice experience.
This is totally off topic, but do people assume because you are a white male that you're American? Like when you travel, are they like... Or are they can they tell you're European?
I have had people think now this is probably not hearing me speak, think I'm Turkish before, which is bizarre.
Okay.
sometimes like Eastern European I've got, but I definitely have an American, before you open your mouth. But then sometimes even because, depending on where I am or like who I've been speaking to, I can go a bit more mid-Atlantic because, especially I think I said before, when I was teaching English before, they said, do not teach English in your Northern Irish accent. It needs to be more Americanized. So I did, and like I do get made fun of sometimes by like people over here because I say certain words that are more Americanized than that have just kind of like, have just slotted into my vocabulary without me thinking about them. So you do get teased sometimes,
Oh, and you have a cold.
And I have a cold. Oh, woe is me.
So, are there dialects for in your country?
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to have a ball when you hear some of the accents in this country. And I've talked about this before. That, like, I feel like the variation in accents and how strong some of the accents get in this country, like, you will see a shift within 5 miles of where I am that will probably blow your mind in terms of how almost unrecognizable it is. It's kind of crazy. Whereas I think, America, for example, that the spread of that feels further away. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll maybe get a state, which is, the entirety of Northern Ireland would fit into, that speaks broadly a similar accent, very broadly. Whereas over here, you will get a variation in accent that will blow your mind.
Yeah, you'd have to drive like days or a day in order to find like Texan accent.
Yeah. Or Boston, which I think is a strong accent and so on. Yeah.
Like New York, Boston.
Yeah.
Like the South.
Yes.
Kentucky, Texas, the Dakotas.
Yeah.
Like, so it's definitely, the more I think about it, like, we really do have very different dialects. And like Michigan, like up, by Canada, it's interesting. But like Vermont, they sound like, Oregonians. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
doesn't. Who knows? I know.
It does. I know it doesn't. So I don't quite understand. I didn't do my homework because of Doug, our researcher, who is apparently on break.
Doug. He has been shirking his duties recently.
Totally. But like, I'm curious as to like how the dialects started. From what region did they come, and how long ago, and why, and I'm sure it has to do with everybody coming over on Ellis Island. This is so off topic, but I've been doing a lot of research because Mike's been trying to get his Polish passport.
Oh,
so I've been like going down the wormhole of like doing actual research at Ellis Island in all of their databases, trying to find his like all of his genealogy,
ancestry,
death certificates, marriage certificates, and unfortunately he can't because his ancestors immigrated before 1920, when Poland became like they changed the regions and Poland became Poland, and so they moved before that.
I see. Okay, interesting.
So it's been fascinating just to like look at the. I've been trying to read Polish.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah,
right.
It's a tough one.
And they have apps now, like Google Translate. You can actually hold your phone over the document, and then it like translates for you. It's probably done by AI, whatever. But just going down like the history wormhole for this has been quite something.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah, truly. And like, I mean, like, and I suppose that like, certainly my idea of immigration into the Americas, like, back then there was so much of it. I'm sure there's like a lot of incomplete records, a lot of stuff that's very kind of hard to find.
You saw The Godfather.
I did see The Godfather.
They changed his last name.
Unbelievable.
Or they changed his name. He was from Corleone, so they didn't get that was his last name.
Yeah. Why?
So that's fact.
It is very much so. So like one of the things. Well, I mean, I suppose the other thing to touch upon would be, so whenever I went to Korea, and that's where I first started teaching English, that was the first time I did it, I was like, oh shit, I have to relearn English. I have to relearn a lot of the rules.
Interesting.
Because, whenever you speak
we know language, what we speak, but we don't know why. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's stuff that I did know, and I'd say I hope I would say I probably knew more than sort of the average person, because I studied English certainly until like quite a high level, but a lot of it was gone, and I had to like sit down and really kind of relearn the building blocks that I would be teaching these kids, because they would have questions for me, and I would be like, so I didn't want to be put in that position particularly, like they'd be like, well, you speak this language, how do you not know? But I think it's probably true for a lot of native speakers in terms of, the building blocks. A lot of the building blocks they probably don't have a lot of an idea about. They just know what works, how to put sentences together,
It's kind of embarrassing. I can actually speak to this because I have children who are learning how to read and write right now. And they'll be like, why does this word have 4 meanings? And I'll be like, I don't know. Yeah. It's just kind of, some words do. Like, that's literally my answer.
I remember even like some of the kids that I was teaching in Korea, like going like looking at read and read, and they're like, it's this teacher, it's the same word, and I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. It is the same word,
and my answer is like, it's just weird, that's why I don't, it is such a smashing of like different you find the root, right? And a lot of it is based on European and Spanish words, so it doesn't all make sense, because it's I don't know, it's just everything's shoved in there.
It really is. It's like the connection, or what is it, the exception is the word I was looking for. So basically, like a lot of the times, in these books, they would be like, here's the rule, and they'd be like, okay, we get it, and then here's the list of exceptions, and they'd be like, it's so long, and I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. Because like, English is certainly, there's been so many influences from so many different languages and stuff like that have kind of went into what it is currently, so it's, there's so many kind of weird exceptions and rules and stuff like that in this language, so it can be hard to explain to somebody. I think, and I've had quite a few friends who English isn't their native language, and it sounds like it can be, to understand English completely can be quite a challenge, just because it is so
I've heard it
wild.
Stated that it's the hardest language to learn,
and
I don't know how true that is. But
it seems like it's up there.
I can't imagine, especially with slang. I am too.
Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to learn it, because even raising native speakers, it's so confusing.
Yeah.
It's so confusing.
And even like how it's used in this country compared to America, for example, it's so
you say words
different.
and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, the slang episode, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all. You just really, you can shorten it. You literally shorten like 7 words into like 4 letters.
I know. That's quite funny.
I'm still mad you won that round. But, so I guess, do you think that language has helped build different community for you?
That's a good question. I mean, had I stayed here, probably not. But like, because I kind of traveled a bit, then definitely that has been a good way to kind of like, make connections with like other foreigners in these countries, and also make connections with people that actually live there. I mean, it has been my experience by and large that whenever like I was in Taiwan, for example, and I started speaking Mandarin, like so many Taiwanese people were just like, no, I'll speak to you in English. you murdering our language like this, and I'm like, okay, I understand. But even that's fun. Do you know what I mean? It's like you make an attempt and people like go, no, I'll speak English to you. It's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it has, but I don't think. One of my best friends, I told her before, she's Japanese, and like all too often she will send me like English phrases or English words. I wish I thought of some examples for this. And she'd be like, what does this mean? And a lot of times you're like, oh, this is so difficult because I'm explaining it to you in English, and her English is good, but like I still have to explain a fairly complex idea, and I have to use words that I already know that you know. Because if I throw in extra words that you don't know, then that will be more explaining that needs to be done. So that's kind of like a challenge. I do quite like it, and I think talking to her about this, which has been constant over like the years of our sort of friendship, has really helped me improve how I relay those ideas. She's always saying that I'm like a good English teacher, and I'm like, yes, finally, years later, I got there.
Someone who's not paying you is saying
as long as they're paying me, like, yeah, I'm just a freebie. Yeah.
Huh.
What about you?
I think so. I think, I really make an effort, even if I butcher it, to try and learn a few key phrases in every place I go. And I also think it allows you to, what's interesting is I'll be in a taxi, and the taxi driver is like, oh, you speak English? And I'll be like, yes. And he'll be like, I want to work on my English. And I'll be like, I want to work on my Spanish. And so that will be our way of really communicating, on a 45-minute drive or whatever. So I love those interactions. And then usually that cab driver's like, if you need to buzz around, here's my card, and I'll take you wherever you need to go. And then I've got a friend for the week. Yeah. So in those ways, I've made connections. In terms of community, I think that just being open to trying has given me access, instead of just like bulldozing my way through and being like, I speak American, I don't know, right? Yeah. Which I know that there's a travel stigma. Yes. And I try not to fall into that.
That is true of British people as well.
Okay. So it has allowed me, we've got friends in Maria that, there's an absolute language barrier. They do not speak English. So we are like butchering our way through French, lots of like hand gestures, but like how lovely is that we get to experience that. They're like the kids' other grandparents, they take care of us, we take care of them, they help us celebrate Christmas every year, like it's a whole thing. And we don't really, they try to speak, and we try to get and speak. Mike speaks French much better than I do. But it's still one of my favorite parts of the year, just being around them.
And I think there's something there, and as long as you're kind of like you say open to that, open to like, because like any sort of learning process involves a large period of time living in ignorance, right? And as long as you're not embarrassed about that, and you kind of enjoy the fun of that, it's great. And it's like, who cares if you get things wrong? You're trying, that's what matters.
Can you say that again?
Oh no.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna listen back.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Anything, something. There's a period of ignorance. I'm gonna write it down. That's gonna go on a t-shirt.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
but you're absolutely right. Yeah. There is a period of ignorance. There's a period of like putting yourself in a really vulnerable situation where you're like, I'm so out of my comfort zone, but I'm gonna give it a go.
Yes, I think in my experience, and this is getting away from language, but I think like as people get older, generally speaking, people want less to live in that period of ignorance, whereas like it's one of the reasons why I think I don't care if I'm I don't want to be ignorant, as in I don't want to be rude to people, but I don't care if I look like an idiot, whatever.
Good thing.
Yeah, exactly. I know, thank God. But like, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, if it's getting me to a place that I want to be, or it's getting me to experience that I want to have, then so what? It's like, it's get past your ego in that regard. I think it's just not worth it if it stops you from, having a go at something.
I also think language is different. I think language is also not just words.
Yeah, it's true. So true.
There's a lot that you can connect on and communicate with, just like gestures and pointing,
Yes.
and it's easy to fall into like the Google Translate hole. But when you don't have cell service,
you just have to get by.
You just have to get by, and that's a reality.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
You don't have cell service everywhere, and I am in that position more than I, think about, honestly. So, I think it's important to. I was doing a little bit of, or Doug sent me a link to something, but it was like the more you practice being in that uncomfortable language space, you're trying, like, you're like connecting different neurons. It shows people who retire, like the outcomes of their retirement life, like how long they live, actually has to do with like the travel and the trying and the learning of the languages. And like, so it's like, it's only good stuff, really.
I agree completely.
Like, why not try?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, no, I think you're bang on there. I like that a lot. I there was a thing. Oh yeah, so I mean, I was going to talk a little bit. I think I talked about it at the third sort of the episode a little bit about like Irish and like Gaelic and things like that. Like and it's one of the things. And I'm not going to go into it too much, but like it's kind of like weaponized a little bit in this country in terms of the whole sort of opposing Protestant Catholic side of things, which really sucks. And it feels like sort of Irish is spoken less and less. I know there are in the south of Ireland, there's some villages that do speak almost exclusively Gaelic, which I think is pretty awesome. And I know that like there are so like all the signs in Ireland are in both Gaelic and English, which I think is great as well. But like it's up here because it's seen as such a like polarizing thing, and it's been weaponized in terms of like political parties and stuff like that. So it's kind of become problematic. So there's like so the town I live in has a reputation as being predominantly Protestant in a sort of not a great way. I've lived here a decent chunk of my life, and it was certainly worse when I was a kid, but honestly it's fine now. People are friendly. It's much more of a mixed community than it used to be, but there still is, because of its history, there is still a hardcore bunch of people who still kind of feel a certain way. So you sometimes get stickers put around lampposts and things like that. And one of the ones recently was I'll paraphrase this as best I can, but every sort of word of Irish Gaelic is a bullet in the gun against the cause of our Ulster loyalism, basically. And it was like, that is so inflammatory and insane that you think that these people expressing their heritage is against you. That's so it's so arrogant to be perfectly honest, but like, let people have their culture. It doesn't do you any harm at all, so it's just a bit upsetting. But again, I'm not going to go into that too much because it's a bit of a hot button topic. But I just think it's such a shame because I feel like we, by just like you said, it'd be terrible if this world moved to a point where we're all speaking the same language. There's something so rich and beautiful about having access to all these other languages and the cultures that they bring that it would be such a loss for us to homogenize down into like one tongue. It really would be.
Mm-hmm. Yay, languages. We love you.
Yay, languages. They rule. That reminds me. I keep talking to you just before we go to Irish. I think I've told you about it before, but you should check out I told you about the Guard before.
Yes.
So it's a great one because it's got some Irish language stuff in it as well, and I think it's such a great cultural touchstone, and I think it's very funny as well. But it's a lovely one. So watch the Guard, everyone.
Yes, I need to. Okay, last question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an experience where you messed up something speaking someone else's language and you were like, oh?
I don't think so. I think I can't remember any ones where I've certainly got in trouble. Like, I mean, I think most of the time I can maybe think of a few times like drunkenly I've been attempting to say stuff, and people are just have been fairly good natured about it and kind of understand what I'm trying to do. So I've been lucky, but so nothing terrible, thankfully. Do you have any?
Good. Nothing terrible, but like I do have a memory of being, I think it was in Acapulco, and I was at the grocery store, and instead of saying where is the bathroom, I was asking the guy like, how do I go to the bathroom?
That's an amazing one.
Like anatomically.
I love it.
And he was just like horrified, and then I realized like, oh no, like where's the bathroom? But yeah, so that's typical
like that
me.
That's an amazing one. Yeah, that's a good way to end that chat. And you know, we'd love to hear other people's feedback on this stuff always, or their experiences with the language. And like certainly I have a lot of friends I know that listen to this podcast who I was in Korea with and things like that. You know, I know they have more exposure and more connection to the language that I did, you know, so definitely love to hear their thoughts. But yeah, I think it's super cool. It's something I would like, you know, it's one of these things that's like, it's like, I really would love to know a language intimately one day before I die. Same way I'd love to like learn an instrument properly before I die, you know, so, but if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll see what happens.
You never played any instruments?
Like the recorder, if you know what the recorder is like a flute.
I do. That's it. Everybody starts there.
Yeah.
But it's a real instrument.
It is a real instrument, thankfully. But that's about it, really. Unfortunately, but I will eventually. I've tried guitar a couple of times.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
I can't strum, even on a ukulele. I just don't have the strumming rhythm.
I've been told to try like a bass guitar instead, or there is a club that meets in Carrick that does. There's a ukulele club, and I might. There's unfortunately the same night as my choir, but I want to start going to that and see if I can pick up, you know, the uke. So we'll see what happens. I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good
my
gateway.
voice is my voice is my instrument, right?
That's not inaccurate.
That's true. But yeah. So do you have any other final thoughts before we move on to our end section? Okay.
So this is interesting. No, I'm gonna read a little bit more about Gaelic and what's going on there. Yeah, to educate myself, because that's what I like to do.
Hell yeah. So then as we wrap things up, Beth, I ask you the question that we both love. What's been bringing you joy this week?
So
do you want me to go first?
No, I'll go. Okay. I'm just getting quite a few of my friends are. It's interesting. It's like sometimes like all my friends who are like having hard times, and it's like, oh, they're all like blooming and doing amazing things. So I've been getting a lot of texts lately of just like good things that are happening for the people that I love. So I'm just excited and happy for the people that I like. I wish that, you know, everyone does well. And
yes, me too.
So that's making me happy and bringing me joy. And also we're watching Fallout.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I've seen 2 episodes.
I've never played the game, so this is all like just story for me.
The games are sort of like a bit like of a blank slate in terms of the character and stuff anyway, so it's kind of just doing its own thing. I mean, it's like a lot of the stuff is familiar, but like they're charting their own path, and I've seen 2 episodes and I'm really liking it so far.
Yeah, same. We watched 2 episodes and I was like, let's just keep going with this. Yeah. So, and also I really love apocalyptic stuff in general. Yeah. It's a cool apocalyptic world because it's kind of based on the foundation of like an alternative sort of 50s or 60s where we were like slightly more technologically advanced as well. So it's like it's got all these like really kind of interesting quirks. The music, which was the music that was in a lot of the music was stuff that was in the game, is all that sort of like great old time sort of sound, which I really love. I just hearing that in the first few episodes, I was like, it feels so refreshing because so few shows use things like that, use those sorts of music, that sort of music. So it's been really nice in that regard. I grew up, but like my parents would play that kind of stuff, so I'm like, Mike's like, stop singing the words. I'm like, don't you want to know that I know them all? He's like, so
no,
I know.
I'm trying to listen.
I know, because I sing at him and explain The Godfather. What's been bringing you joy?
So I actually wrote down a few that I'm gonna save them because, you know, for the weeks that I struggle. So one of So I've been really enjoying. There's an X-Men cartoon that's just been come out. So it is a
I saw that
continuation of the X-Men show from the 90s. Mm-hmm. It's really good.
Really?
I was very skeptical. Yeah, it's really well put together. It's like really kind of, and the old show was a bit like this, very earnest and very sort of quite complex in ways, and it is really following that path. It's really kind of doing some interesting things with the characters, and like retelling some really kind of interesting stories from the comics. So it's really fantastic so far, and it just makes me so happy to kind of see those characters again, because they kind of meant so much to me as a kid. So there is two things from that show. So the thing that really, I think I might have told you about this before, probably off pod. What I loved most about that show was, so Gambit is from New Orleans, right? And he's got the worst New Orleans accent ever. Like it's pure trash. So there was two quotes from the original 90s cartoon that stuck with me and are still stick with me to this day. And one was, he saw Wolverine like in a sewer. Wolverine pops up and he goes, "Wolverine, there you are." And my favorite, which is discard, remember it. Which was, he threw a card at somebody, and from now on, and I swear to a couple of years ago, before the reboot was announced, if I'm playing a board game and it calls for somebody like discard a card, they'll say the word discard, and under my breath I'll go, "Remember it." To this day, I like friends are waiting for it from me, because they just know I can't help myself. So good. So yeah, bringing me lots of joy, taking me back to my youth.
That's very good. I love it when you do like other accents, like the Monty Burns. You want to fight? I was doing editing and like putting that up on YouTube, and I'm like, I kept rewinding and laughing. Yeah, that brings me joy.
It kind of like I just drop them now and again, and people are like, "Whoa, what happened?"
You're good. It's good.
It's good. I like it. It's fun.
You're a clever mimic.
Thanks. But yeah. So I think that's it for now, folks. So as always, if you can subscribe, like any of our videos, or on whatever your platform of choice is, we would certainly appreciate it. But yeah, Beth, do you have anything else before we want to wrap things up?
I don't think so.
I should probably write out an end sort of thing about subscribing and liking and stuff like that, shouldn't I? I'll do it. Just wing it.
Go to bendypodcast.com, y'all.
Yeah, bendypodcast.
Find us on all the things. Tell your friends about us if you think that this is worth two friends chatting across the pond.
I had some nice feedback from a friend recently. He says like how like earnest and stuff, and how like refreshingly earnest our podcast was, and I was like, I really quite like that, and so I think there's something quite nice about that. So
it's funny, just like talking to you, like literally, this is just how we talk to each other. Because we were talking about all the things, like when we hopped on, and then I was like, oh, I just want to talk about them all again, because this is just how we talk.
It's true.
So
true. So true. So yeah,
it's nice not having to try very hard.
I know, it really is. It's lovely.
Minimum effort. Yay!
Yay! Maximum fun. But yes, right, okay. That was a very long outro. But it's all right. It was all important. So, as always, sort of. Important bells, which is the most important. So, as always, we would like to remind you to stay bendy.
My range is off today.
And just, I'd like to remind everybody that I have a cold, so my stay bendy was compromised there. So just, allow me some mistakes.
So you're not saying I can win today?
No,
mine wasn't bad.
How dare you? In my condition, Beth?
Sorry.
Right, bye. We love you.
Love you. Bye.